Okay, so we put out our wide receiver rankings about a month ago at this point, and since then, hell, we got Matthew Stafford with tendonitis. We have, Julio Jones going to Tampa. We have a contract extension for Deebo Samuel. We have so many different updates across every NFL training camp that are going to be affecting these rankings, and I want to give you all our updates. I want to give you all the small tweaks that we have made. In this video, we are going to dive into our top 12 wide receivers, and we will get through our top 24, our top 36 in future videos. So if you haven't done so already, go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel. If we hit 90,000 subscribers before the season starts, we will go ahead. We will fire up a 24-hour live stream drafting nonstop so y'all can get in as many real money fantasy football drafts as possible with us. But that should be it. Let's go through. Let's dive into these rankings. Let's start it off with Justin Jefferson at 1. Now, I noticed a trend. Y'all know I'm in drafts literally 24/7. A trend of Justin Jefferson going before Matthew Stafford as the wide receiver 1 off the board for the past about week or so. And up until the Matthew Stafford report, I was pushing back on this. I was saying, yes, I understand with Justin Jefferson. He has the profile of a wide receiver that is on track, is going through and pacing himself to potentially be one of the best wide receivers of all time. Of course, we can go through and we can look at exactly how impressive the first 2 years of his NFL career were in terms of his receiving yards per game and to his yards per target, a hyper efficient receiver. But I don't even want to dive into that. You already know Justin Jefferson's a 21-year-old wide receiver his rookie season that goes out there and has 2.7 yards per route run. And going into year 2, he takes a step forward. His target share goes up to almost 28%. He has 95 receiving yards per game. He's number 1 in the NFL in air yards per game. So there are so many strong positives on this Justin Jefferson profile going into year 3. Of course, you have the coaching change where Kevin O'Connell's supposed to be a more pass-happy NFL head coach than what we previously had in Minnesota. So many different factors are lining up that people wanted to already rank Justin Jefferson as the wide receiver 1 overall, and I wanted to do it with them, but I just couldn't for the time being because we head over and we look at Cooper Kupp. And while, yes, Cooper Kupp last year, instead of being a 22-year-old wide receiver, he was a 28-year-old wide receiver last year. Yes, Cooper Kupp may have more target competition with Allen Robinson coming over, but at the same time, look at Cooper Kupp's 2022 season. 191 targets, 145 receptions, almost 2,000 receiving yards in the regular season, 16 receiving touchdowns. He leads the NFL in receptions, leads the NFL in receiving yards, leads the NFL in receiving touchdowns. And we go through and look at the playoff stretch that we had, an additional 4 games of Cooper Kupp averaging a touchdown and a half a game, averaging almost 120 receiving yards per game, averaging 10.5 targets a game. Cooper Kupp put up arguably one of the best receiving seasons of all time last season. So until this Matthew Stafford report, I was not on board with the young kids over there drafting Justin Jefferson, taking the youth, taking the upside shot over Cooper Kupp at 1, because we've already seen it with Kupp. If Kupp is 90% what he was last year, he can still very easily be the wide receiver 1 overall in fantasy. But now that we have the report with Matthew Stafford and the tendonitis, I am going to just use it as a tiebreaker. I'm going to use it as a tiebreaker. We will have Justin Jefferson at 1. I'll take Cooper Kupp at 2. Now, a big factor in this as well is just what we've seen on drafts lately. I mean, y'all know we draft every single night on the live stream over there on Underdog Fantasy. I'm drafting off the live stream on Underdog Fantasy as well. And I've noticed pretty much at this point, 75% of the field is also taking Justin Jefferson as their wide receiver 1. So if you're going to do multiple drafts this year, you can probably take Justin Jefferson at 1 in one of your drafts and then get Cooper Kupp as the wide receiver 2 off the board. I think they both have strong arguments to be that top wide receiver. And I'm just going to use the Stafford injury as that tiebreaker to go in favor of Justin Jefferson. But real quick, if you want to go draft Justin Jefferson, want to go draft Cooper Kupp, make sure you go to the link in the description, the link in the comment section. Go sign up for Underdog Fantasy. Like I said, I am 100% of the day in an underdog fantasy draft because they're so much fun. And when you go and sign up to draft and use promo code FLOCK, they will match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. You'll get our 2022 rankings. You'll get our 2022 fantasy football draft guide. Has over 300 pages of information. So make sure you take advantage of that. But let's keep it in this same tier. Let's go over to Jamar Chase as the wide receiver 3. Now with Jamar Chase, this is a wide receiver that we are definitely projecting a step forward. I mean, he was the wide receiver 5 last year, and he had some things go right for him. I mean, if you're looking at Jamar Chase with his touchdown rate, to be honest, it was probably a little bit unsustainable. You had a touchdown rate for Jamar Chase a little over 10%. If we go and compare this to, say, a Justin Jefferson, where Justin Jefferson has averaged about a touchdown rate half of Jamar Chase over the past 2 years. Now, maybe you make the argument, well, Mason, Jamar Chase is a more dynamic player. I'm not going to buy into that. I'm not going to buy into the fact that you think you can project Jamar Chase for twice the touchdown rate of Justin Jefferson. So we probably will see some regression in that fashion for Chase because that's the most volatile statistic from a year-to-year standpoint in fantasy football. But I'm just all in on going through and betting on this Cincinnati Bengals offense. Now, I understand a lot of smart people, if you look at Las Vegas win totals right now, they're projecting that the Cincinnati Bengals are going to take a step back. They're projecting that the Bengals aren't going to be as good this year as they were last year just due to natural volatility in football. But what I'm looking at is an offense that went through and dramatically improved their offensive line play. Like the Cincinnati Bengals were the worst team in the NFL in sacks allowed last year. And now coming into this season, PFF has them graded out as a top 10 offensive line. Now, usually this shouldn't have a massive impact in terms of projecting wide receivers, but I think we may see the scheme change entirely for the Cincinnati Bengals. Because if you look at the pace of play for the Cincinnati Bengals last year, the Bengals were a slow offense. I mean, this was a team that was not trying to be up there with Dallas Cowboys, with the Buffalo Bills, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, with the Kansas City Chiefs, to be a top 5 offensive pace of play and get off as many plays per game. And of course, I don't have personal access to Zach Taylor. I can't talk to Joe Burrow. I can't figure out exactly why their offense was so slow and was limiting the amount of plays that this team had overall. But if I was an NFL head coach, I think that would be an easy way to keep your quarterback safe. If you know your quarterback's getting hit pretty much every single drop back, if you know that you have a horrendous offensive line, your quarterback's coming off a significant injury, if you're going to do anything to protect the man, let's might as well slow the game down. Let's try to get out of there with as few sacks and as few hits on Joe Burrow as possible, where this upcoming season, if they have a very good offensive line, which they should according to PFF, I think you get the pace of play up for the Cincinnati Bengals. I think this becomes a more aggressive offense overall. I think the passing attempts go up. I think Jamar Chase in his target share goes up and the volume of the offense goes up. So across the board, it's in the range of outcomes for any of these wide receivers in the top 3 to have a 2,000-yard season. It is possible for them to have a 2,000-yard season, 20 touchdown season. Of course, we have 17 games to do that off of, but still, I think you have to see the upside case with Jamar Chase. I mean, the only rookie wide receivers in NFL history to go through and average 80 receiving yards a game and average 0.7 touchdowns per game, Jamar Chase and Odell Beckham Jr. And that's it. Now let's go through and let's look at Stefan Diggs, wide receiver 4. Here was Stefan Diggs. Yes, I'm going to sneak him into this top tier. I know if you're looking at fantasy football drafts right now, no, Stefan Diggs isn't going in this range, but we've talked about this for God knows how long now. We're going and looking into an offense that has no Emmanuel Sanders, has no Cole Beasley. They took up 184 targets last season. Now, of course, you can project that Gabriel Davis is going to get a bump up. Maybe Gabriel Davis gets an additional 90 targets this upcoming season. And beyond that, you have Isaiah McKenzie. You have Jamison Crowder coming over to play the slot. But it's not guaranteed that those players are going to take up these 180 targets available. If we go back and look in 2020 with Stefan Diggs, this was a wide receiver that had almost a 28% team target share. We know that Stefan Diggs can get to that elite level mark. He had 2.7 yards per route run back in 2020. He was the wide receiver 3 overall. So with the departure of other top receivers in this offense, with being attached to Josh Allen, you have to be so excited. And we can even look at 2021 in a little bit of a skewed light, because remember that singular game that you had from the Buffalo Bills against the New England Patriots, where New England had 2 or 3 pass attempts. Buffalo obviously couldn't throw the ball at all due to the weather as well. So if you were to remove that game, I would imagine that the statistics for Stefan Diggs in 2021, which had him as the wide receiver 9 overall, actually end up looking a little bit better. Overall, I think you're going to get a bounce back season from Stefan Diggs based on the elite level offense he should be playing in and the lack of overall quality target competition. I think Stefan Diggs can get to a 28% team target share with the best quarterback in football. In my opinion, that makes him a tier 1 wide receiver. Now going down to tier 2, we are going to have Devonte Adams. Nothing has changed here with Devonte Adams. I don't think we need to talk about him that much in terms of updates that we've had since our last rankings video. But here with Devonte Adams, he's averaged the wide receiver 3 finish over the past 3 years. I was drafting him as the 3rd player off the board in PPR formats last offseason. My issue now is you get the downgraded quarterback from Aaron Rodgers to Derek Carr. And on top of this, you have more target competition in Las Vegas than what we saw with Devonte Adams for a very long time. Now you have Darren Waller, you have Hunter Renfrow. So I think we have to be worried about Devonte Adams no longer managing that 28, 29% team target share that made him so elite in Green Bay. So if you have the overall targets coming down, as well as the efficiency of those targets, given the quarterback play coming down as well, Devonte Adams is no longer the guaranteed wide receiver 1 in fantasy. I'm going to have him down here in his own tier at 5. Now going over to 6, let's put CeeDee Lamb. Now with CeeDee Lamb, this is going to be a wide receiver that has never finished higher than the wide receiver 16. In 2021, he was the wide receiver 16 in fantasy on a points per game basis. So I understand a lot of people are going to go, okay, well, Mason, come on. I mean, CeeDee Lamb was the wide receiver 16, and the Dallas Cowboys were the number 1 offense in the NFL. Dallas isn't going to be the number 1 offense in the NFL. How are you going to rank CeeDee Lamb at wide receiver 6? Guys, we are looking at a Dallas Cowboys offense that since Kellen Moore has taken over, this team has been at the very, and I repeat, very top of the NFL in both pace of play and passing rate over expectation. The Dallas Cowboys just run an offense that breeds fantasy football points. Regardless of what you think about the team, they are going to produce a ridiculous amount of fantasy points. The issue last year, and why they didn't have an elite level season for CeeDee Lamb, is this offense was so spread out. You had Lamb, you had Amari, you had Gallup. I mean, you even had Cedric Wilson, Dalton Schultz, Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard, where now a lot of those pieces are gone. You're looking at this offense without Cedric Wilson over there in Miami, without Amari Cooper over there in Cleveland. Michael Gallup's going to be injured to start the year. And I am not as excited as people are right now with Jalen Tolbert. I mean, if you go over to Underdog Fantasy, we see it every single night because this Dallas Cowboys situation just breeds fantasy points, pumps them out nonstop. People are drafting Jalen Tolbert over freaking Garrett Wilson, a 4-year wide receiver out of South Alabama. Yes, I understand I don't even want to talk about that right now. This is about CeeDee Lamb. He's in an elite spot, the best situation you could find yourself, and he's extremely young. He's younger than Jalen Waddle, Najee Harris, Kenny Pickett, Devonta Smith. So I think, while yes, he was the wide receiver 16 last year, you're going to expect that talent continues to develop, and he already had 2.2 yards per route run. Lamb was an elite level prospect coming in. He's been hyper efficient through the first 2 years of his NFL career, still extremely young, continuing to develop, and now in the perfect situation to just pump out fantasy point after fantasy point after fantasy point. Now, I don't exactly know how to do this because we did have Mike Evans in the same tier with CeeDee Lamb. We actually had Mike Evans over CeeDee Lamb in the first set of these rankings, but I think we're even going to move him down a tier. I think we are going to have Lamb in his own tier, very similar to how Devonte Adams is his own, and we are going to go down to Mike Evans, wide receiver 7. Now, Mike Evans is going to be the wide receiver 7 here because I think you actually may have a sell high moment at the beginning of the season where, yes, there are reports Chris Godwin's back at practice. That is fantastic. Julio Jones coming over to Tampa. That is going to provide well-needed wide receiver depth for this offense. So with Evans, he's on the decline. He used to be drafted at the very beginning of the second round in underdog drafts. Now you're getting him sometimes at the 2-3 turn. However, in your casual fantasy football redraft leagues, I'm still standing by my assessment of the Chris Godwin situation. I never thought he was going to miss 6, 7, 8 weeks like some other people told you he was going to. I still stand by the fact that I think he is going to miss 2, maybe 3 weeks and be back by week 4, but he's not going to be back 100% Chris Godwin standards when he does come back into this offense. I think there'll be that slight lag. I think with Mike Evans here, he's still going to be in a very similar situation to the Dallas Cowboys in that Tampa wants to have the number 1 offense in pace of play as well as passing rate over expectation this upcoming season. And Mike Evans has led the NFL in back-to-back years with his overall touchdown rate. So if you're playing in a casual fantasy football league where you think you can get elite level production from Mike Evans at the very beginning of the season and then go ahead and sell him after a hot start, that's where I want to rank him at 7. If you're playing in a league where you don't think your league mates are going to be willing to buy high on Mike Evans, where you don't think you're going to be able to sell him high, our next wide receiver, I may even move up over him. Our next guy is Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel, the wide receiver 8 in these rankings, in the same tier as Mike Evans. He was the wide receiver 3 last season. He averaged 110 total yards a game. He averaged 3.1 yards per route run. Now, I will say this was such an outlier season. We've never had a wide receiver look like this. I mean, if we're going through, we're looking at wide receivers to average 50 receiving yards per game and 20 rushing yards per game since the year 2000. You had Percy Harvin and Deebo Samuel. And Percy Harvin, back in 2011 with the Minnesota Vikings, wasn't nearly as productive as Deebo. I mean, Deebo's up there at 87 receiving yards per game compared to Percy Harvin at 60. We've never seen this before, and I am concerned with a couple different factors. The main one being Trey Lance. Y'all know I've been the fan of the Trey Lance fan club for God knows how long now. But realistically speaking, why I love Trey Lance from a fantasy football perspective is his own rushing production and specifically the ceiling that he may have with rushing touchdowns. With how big he is, with how dominant he is in the running department, I think that Lance is going to be vulturing rushing touchdowns from Deebo Samuel at the goal line. Deebo Samuel had 8 rushing touchdowns last year. I'm personally going to be expecting that to come down. You also have injury concerns with Deebo Samuel, not to mention the fact that Deebo Samuel, historically speaking, over the past 3 seasons, has had the league's lowest average depth of target across all wide receivers. Rondell Moore took that spot last year, but over the past 3 seasons. And if you're a low average depth of target receiver, what do you not want? You don't want a mobile quarterback that's able to escape from pressure, that's able to run it for a first down himself. You want someone that's a pocket passing option that has to dump it off to you if he does feel that pressure, like Jimmy Garoppolo. So I don't like the quarterback change for Deebo Samuel, which is why we're going to have him at 8. Now, our next tier down, let's go ahead. Let's put Tyreek Hill here. With Tyreek Hill, I don't know if you've heard this, but according to himself, he now is finally playing with the most accurate quarterback in the NFL. Yeah, I mean, Patrick Mahomes does have the strongest arm in the NFL, but if you ask Tyreek Hill, hell, he'll take accuracy over arm strength any day of the week. Of course, I'm joking, guys. No, Tyreek Hill is not going to be better in freaking Miami. Tua Tagovailoa is not in the same league as Patrick Mahomes, but with Hill, he is an elite level athlete. He's an elite level talent. It's a bad situation. I'm not drafting him very often. I wouldn't be too surprised if you actually have, I hate saying this, but if you have Jalen Waddle as the wide receiver 1 in Miami. I can't rank it that way. I do think it's more likely to be Tyreek Hill, but it is in the range of outcomes. So Tyreek Hill is going to lead us off at this tier at 9. Our wide receiver 10 in the same tier is going to be Keenan Allen. With Keenan Allen, he's averaged a wide receiver 10 finish over the past 3 years. With Keenan Allen, over the past 3 years, his lowest mark with his receiving yards per game has been 71. With Keenan Allen over the past 3 years, his lowest mark with his targets per game, 9.3. His lowest target share per game, 24.7. I mean, across the board, Keenan Allen has been one of the most consistent receivers in fantasy. There are a few red flags, and that's why I can't have Keenan Allen over Tyreek Hill. That's why I can't have him up in there in the same tier with Mike Evans. And that's if you're looking at his air yards per game, Keenan Allen is no longer being used downfield. I mean, 2 years ago, back in 2019, you had Keenan Allen with 98 air yards per game. This has fallen down to 49 this past season. So Keenan Allen's being used a lot closer to the line of scrimmage. He's not going to have a ton of upside because He's not that vertical element for non-PPR formats. Non-PPR formats, you actually probably prefer Mike Williams because Mike Williams is the guy with touchdown upside. But in your PPR format, Keenan Allen's going to give you such a high floor as a high-end wide receiver 2, and probably going to end up being a low-end wide receiver 1 just because the amount of volume that he's going to accumulate in Los Angeles with one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Now let's go down to our wide receiver 11 here. We are going to have a receiver that is the wide receiver 2 in his offense. We are going to have T. Higgins. Going back to what we were discussing with Jamar Chase, this offense, in my opinion, may take a step forward. They may look to push that pace of play to run significantly more plays per game. And all of a sudden that gives T. Higgins access to that elite level ceiling. He had a higher target share in games where Jamar Chase and T. Higgins played together. And at the same time, T. Higgins had 2.3 yards per route run. He had more air yards per game than Jamar Chase at 101. We had an argument in the live stream last night on who is the best wide receiver 2 in the NFL in terms of the actual talent. A lot of people thought it was T. Higgins. I think maybe Waddle's a more talented guy, but it doesn't matter because T. Higgins is playing with Joe Burrow. And at the same time, this team doesn't use depth at all. They're going to use Chase, Higgins, Boyd, and that's it. You don't have to worry about the wide receiver 4, the wide receiver 5 stealing targets. You don't really have to worry about the tight end having a large target share, the running backs having a large target share. Everything's funneled through these top end guys. I think the 2022 Cincinnati Bengals can be very similar to the 2019 Tampa Bay Buccaneers minus the interceptions. Now, our wide receiver 12, the last guy here, is going to be in a horrendous situation, but the talent dictates we have to put him here. Let's go ahead and let's put A.J. Brown, wide receiver 12. Now, I understand, guys, Jalen Hurts is not going to provide a ton of passing volume for this offense. Jalen Hurts isn't some elite level NFL quarterback. No, of course not. If he was, A.J. Brown would be a first-round pick in fantasy. A.J. Brown would be up there ranked before Stefan Diggs. You're having to rank A.J. Brown this low because the poor situation he's in. But A.J. Brown, over the past 3 years, has proven to be one of the most talented wide receivers in the NFL. The last 3 years, wide receivers that average a target share higher than 23% and yards per route run 2.7 or more have been A.J. Brown, Devonte Adams, and Justin Jefferson. Just to give you an idea of the talent profile that you're having for an A.J. Brown, A.J. Brown's only 25 years old at the same time. So we're willing to draft Justin Jefferson in the top 5 picks this year. We're willing to draft Devonte Adams at the end of the first round. We have to move A.J. Brown down because if we're looking at Jalen Hurts, he is going to cap the ceiling in this offense. But from a talent perspective, he has to be inside our top 12. But I think that's all I got for y'all. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. If you did, please go down there, drop a like, subscribe to the channel so we can get to our 90,000 subscribers. We can get that 24-hour live stream draft going. But thank you again. I appreciate you. I hope you have a great day. And make sure you go sign up for Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code FLOCK when you sign up so you can get in some drafts with us. We will be streaming Underdog drafts tonight on the live stream. And also, you'll get our 2022 rankings. You'll get our 2022 draft guide and a 100% deposit match. You can find that link at the top. Thank you again, guys. I appreciate y'all.